Pedro or Mateus Cunha, and Haaland keep or sell? I've asked the FPL experts the important questions going into FPL Game Week 13. Help me get this to 500 likes and subscribe to the channel. Let's get into it. The first question I put to the experts this week was which budget forward to buy, João Pedro, Mateus Cunha or other. Now in my mind, I'm very clear on which one of these two I prefer. If you watched my Form V fixtures video yesterday, you'll have seen the statistics behind the scenes that backs that up. But things are very even between the experts. It was a 50-50 call between this pair, so maybe not the most helpful if you have got a decision to make on which one to buy this week, but it's Mateus Cunha who could be on for a triple rise, who is the most transferred in. I also asked the experts whether to keep or sell Erling Haaland. Now this was pretty conclusive. 81% said sell, only 19% said keep. Obviously he did score a brace in the Champions League, but it was another very shaky performance from Man City, who were comfortably 3-0 up and ended up with a 3-3 draw against Feyenoord. So even though Haaland's form is always threatening, I think the general form of the team is enough that we can't justify holding an asset at this price point who we're not going to captain each week when there's so many attractive, cheap options elsewhere. Now, the final question I asked the experts was for their favourite Spurs attacker. And the reason I asked this is because Spurs fixtures are still looking pretty good over the next 4 game weeks. They're the team that have scored the most goals in the Premier League so far this season. They're very explosive, so it still feels like an important attack to cover. Now, Brennan Johnson has been the favourite of many managers over the last 6 to 8 game weeks. He was, of course, in the experts team before making way for Salah last time out. And the problem we've seen in recent games is that he's been losing his place in the squad. With Bentancur out, we've seen a shift in the midfield to get a few more holding midfielders in there. That's moved Maddison up to the 10 role, Kulusevski wide, and no place for Johnson. So if you are wondering how do I remain invested in this Spurs attack, well, this is what the experts had to say. 38% believe that Son is the best attacker from Spurs. The challenge is his price point. When you compare him to the likes of Palmer and Saka, it's really difficult to get him in. 31% believe Solanke is the best pick though, and there is a spot in our forward lines for him right now, especially if you're moving away from Haaland. Kulusevski at 19% of the vote. It does come with risk, of course. You look at Maddison and Johnson. Maddison was the star man last time out. There will still be rotation in those places though, in the 10 and that right winger role, which does cause a little bit of concern when buying any of them. So Son and Solanke the standouts. Probably Solanke the more affordable, but if you can get to Son, he's an amazing differential in the game right now. Let's have a look at the standings in the Experts Community Team Invitational League. And Game Week 12 was such a swingy one, and you can see that in the changes in the top 10. FPL Mez, I think, is up 4 places with an 80-pointer in the top 5k in the world, so well done to her. It was a week where if you owned Salah and captained him, and you also had the likes of Cunha and João Pedro, you did very, very well. We saw Davey come into the top 10 for the first time this season with a 90-pointer. FPL Tips YouTube still in the top 10k as well. FPL's Zlatan and Mahmoud Al-Zubi on the slide with red arrows. Rich P continues to climb the rankings, as does Jimmy G, and FPL Air is back into the top 10. So kudos to them. If you are beating the experts team, let me know in the comments. And if you're doing really well this season and would feature in this top 10, I really want to hear from you. Now, if we have a look at how the experts team did then, as you can see, 52 points, a very small green arrow. Double Arsenal defence, we've been locked in on that since the Game Week 6 wildcard finally delivered a clean sheet. Gabriel is now flagged though after going off with a little bit of an issue in the Champions League on Tuesday night, so that's something that we need to keep an eye on. Elsewhere, it was blanks for everyone other than Salah, who we brought in and captained, so we definitely needed that haul to keep us afloat. The other transfers in failed to do anything for us this week, but there's hope that in the long run they will. We made a good decision benching Chris Wood because he was benched for Nottingham Forest. There were points on our bench though. Mark Flecken with a 9-pointer outscored Raya. Pedro Porro, 14-pointer. The experts were very split on whether to start Lewis or Porro, and I actually put it to a community poll on YouTube. And you guys, I think it was 70-30 in favour of Porro. 14-point swing is tough to take in a season where luck has not been on our side. Transfer plans for the experts then: 2 free transfers, 2.9 million in the bank. The overwhelming majority are keen to roll the transfer this week, 69% going with that. There are some players that could make way though, and Burmo with 13% of the vote, which surprised me because he's got a home game next, a good home game, and Brentford are so solid at home. Rogers, Wood and Pedro Porro all with 7% of the vote. In terms of those players that come in, we do have enough funds to go from Burmo to Saka, which kind of justifies that move. I can see why, you know, managers are suggesting that, but this week does not feel like the exit point for Mbeumo or necessarily the buying point for Saka for West Ham away. I think there's probably better opportunities in the next couple of weeks. João Pedro, Mitoma and Saliba all with 7% of the vote. No mention of Matheus Cunha, the player who is the most transferred in this week, who isn't in our team. So I think that goes to show that, you know, the likes of Wood, Visser, Isak, you know, the good fixtures this week, you kind of need to keep faith with whichever forward you're plugged into right now in the game. Let's have a look then at how this experts team lines up for game week 13. Quite a few decisions in the defence. First of all, do we play Raya away at West Ham or Flecken at home to Leicester? Bit of a 50-50 here between the experts. Raya just about gets the nod. It will be a double up on the Arsenal defence if Gabriel is fit for that trip to West Ham. Pedro Porro back in to start against Fulham at home despite a load of injuries in the Spurs defence. Vicario now out for months. Van de Ven and Romero both flagged as well. Aït-Nouri in lovely home game against Bournemouth. Semenyo suspended for that one, so that's definitely going to help. So we've got Lewis on the bench for Liverpool away and Greaves for Forest away, who is still flagged, but hopefully he'll be back this week. Semenyo also on the bench because of that suspension. That means that the front seven kind of picks itself. Some nice fixtures here though. And Burmo at home to Leicester, Palmer at home to Aston Villa, Rogers away at Chelsea, has got a knack of scoring in those away games. Salah at home to City, of course. Never been a better time to face City, if I'm honest. And in the forward line, we've got Isak away at Crystal Palace, Wood at home to Ipswich, and Visser at home to Leicester. Some really attractive fixtures there. This team looks quite good on paper at the moment, so fingers crossed that finally translates to some points, because it has been tricky over the last few game weeks. The last big decision to make is captaincy. The experts quite split here between Salah and Palmer, but it is just Salah that edges it. 56% of the vote, v Palmer at 44% of the vote. So it is Salah that gets the captaincy, Palmer the vice captaincy. Salah's just been so consistent this season. I don't have any qualms about captaining him against City. 8 double-digit hauls in 12, scored in 5 consecutive games. Confidence is sky high. Saved his missed penalty for the Champions League, so hopefully he's back on them in the league. He always misses one a season, so it's good that that's not affected us from an FPL perspective. But yeah, huge game week ahead. Obviously, we'll be looking for that little update on the status of Gabriel's injury in the press conferences on Friday. I will be going live at 12:30 UK time. The link to the press conference stream is in the description to this video, so make sure you're hitting the notify button. Of course, like and subscribe. I'll be live twice on Friday, because the deadline stream will also be coming your way at about 5:30. Thank you for watching.